The Zalarian cargo vessel drifted through the endless black void between star systems. Captain Crix pressed all four of his hands against the command console, watching the power readings drop lower with each passing hour. The ship's emergency lights cast strange shadows across the bridge, making everything look more hopeless than it already was. "How long until complete system failure?" Crix asked his engineer, trying to keep fear out of his voice. Yara, the ship's chief engineer, looked up from her diagnostics panel. Her large eyes showed the same worry that everyone on the bridge felt. "Maybe 30 hours, Captain. The quantum drive explosion damaged our backup generators worse than we thought. We're losing power faster now." The explosion had happened 3 days ago. One moment they were traveling through hyperspace on a routine cargo run, and the next moment their quantum drive had torn itself apart. The safety systems had worked perfectly, dropping them out of hyperspace before the ship could be destroyed. But that was where their luck had ended. They were now stuck in the empty space between stars. The nearest star system was 4 light-years away. Even if their engines still worked, which they didn't, it would take thousands of years to reach it at sublight speeds. They were trapped in the darkest, emptiest part of the galaxy. "What about the distress beacon?" asked Navigator Pren from his station. "Still broadcasting," Communications Officer Dex reported. "But we're so far from any trade routes or inhabited systems. The chances of anyone hearing us?" He didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what he meant. The Zalarian Confederation had strict protocols about deep space travel. Ships were supposed to file flight plans and stick to established routes, but Captain Crix had wanted to save time. He had taken a shortcut through uncharted space. Now that decision might cost them all their lives. "Temperature in the lower decks is dropping," someone reported. "We've sealed those sections to save power." Crix nodded. They had already moved all 47 crew members to the central sections of the ship. As systems failed, they would have to keep moving everyone into smaller and smaller areas. Eventually, life support would fail too. The captain looked around at his crew. Zalarians were a proud species, with their tall, thin bodies covered in scales that changed color with emotion. Right now, everyone's scales were the dull gray of despair. They had families waiting for them, children who would grow up without parents, partners who would never know what happened to their loved ones. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the sensors," Dex suddenly announced. Everyone turned to look at him. Hope flickered in their hearts. "Another ship?" Crix asked quickly. "I don't think so. It's a signal, but not like any I've seen before. Very weak, but definitely artificial. Can you decode it?" Dex worked at his console for several minutes. "It's not in any language in our database. Wait, there's a pattern. It's mathematical. Universal constants. Someone is trying to establish basic communication." The bridge fell silent. First contact protocols were clear, but they had never been used in a situation like this. They were dying in deep space, and now they were receiving signals from an unknown species. "How far away?" Crix asked. "Hard to tell with our damaged sensors. Maybe 2 light-years? The signal is old. It would have taken years to reach us." 2 light-years. Even if this unknown species had faster-than-light travel, it would take time to reach them. More time than they had. "Send a response," Crix ordered. "Include our coordinates, our situation, everything. Use the same mathematical patterns they're using." As Dex worked, the ship's doctor entered the bridge. "Captain, we need to talk about rationing. Food isn't the problem, but water recycling is failing. We need to cut consumption by half starting now." Everything was falling apart. But Crix had to stay strong for his crew. "Do what you need to do, Doctor." "How long will our supplies last?" "With strict rationing, maybe 20 days. Without the recyclers working properly, we're losing water to the void." 20 days. Less time than their power would last. They would die of thirst in the darkness between stars. Message sent, Dex reported. But Captain, even if they received our original distress call when we sent it, and even if they left immediately at light speed, they couldn't reach us for years. I know, Crick said quietly, but we have to try everything. Hours passed. The crew worked to extend their survival time by even minutes. They shut down non-essential systems, moved everyone into just 3 compartments, and began the strictest rationing protocols. The temperature kept dropping. Soon they could see their breath in the air. Then something impossible happened. Captain, Dex shouted, I'm receiving another signal. It's a response to our message. That's impossible, Pren said. We just sent it. Even at light speed, it should take years to reach anyone. I know what I'm seeing, Dex insisted. They're responding to our exact message. They know our coordinates, our situation. They're saying they're coming. The bridge erupted in confusion. How could anyone respond so quickly? It defied the laws of physics. There's more, Dex continued, his scales shifting to a bright orange of excitement. They're sending technical data, schematics, instructions for some kind of beacon. They want us to build something. Yara moved to look at the data. Her eyes grew wide. This is incredible. It's using principles I've never seen before. But I think I understand what they want us to do. They're trying to help us create a targeting system for some kind of rescue. Can we build it? Crix asked. With what we have on board? Maybe. It won't be pretty, but if these calculations are correct... She paused, double-checking the mathematics. Captain, this is using some kind of space-folding technology, theoretical stuff. Things our scientists say won't be possible for centuries. How long to build it? If everyone helps, 10 hours, maybe 12. Then get started. Everyone not essential to running what's left of the ship helps Yara. The crew worked with new energy. Having something to do, having hope, changed everything. They tore apart non-essential systems for parts. They rewired circuits and rebuilt components according to the alien instructions. The work was hard, especially in the growing cold, but no one complained. As they worked, more messages came from the unknown rescuers. They sent medical data about Zalarian physiology, showing knowledge they shouldn't have. They sent messages of encouragement, promises that help was coming. They even sent what seemed to be entertainment files to help keep morale up. How do they know so much about us? Someone asked. Does it matter? Another replied. They're trying to save us. The device took shape. It was ugly, built from salvaged parts and held together by hope as much as engineering. But when they activated it, it worked. A strange energy field surrounded their ship, pulsing with power they couldn't understand. Now what? Crix asked. His answer came in the form of space itself bending in front of them. A massive tear in reality opened up, edges crackling with impossible energy. And through that tear came a ship. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of their cargo vessel. But what struck them most was how crude it looked. While Zalarian ships were sleek and elegant, this vessel was all function over form. Heavy armor plating, obvious weapon systems, massive engines. It looked like it was built for war, not exploration. They're sending a message, Dex said, his voice shaking. Audio and video. Put it through. The main screen lit up, showing the bridge of the alien vessel, and there, standing in the center, was a creature none of them had ever seen before. It stood on 2 legs, with only 2 arms. Its skin was soft and pink, with fur only on the top of its head. By galactic standards, it was almost disturbingly plain. But its eyes... There was something in those eyes. Determination, kindness, strength. Zalarian vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship Resilience. We received your distress call. Sorry it took us so long to get here. Hold tight. We're going to get you home. Earth. Humans. No one in the Zalarian Confederation had heard of them before, but right now they were the most beautiful words in any language. This is Captain Crix. he managed to say. How did you get here so fast? How did you know about us? The human smiled. Long story, Captain. Let's get your people safe first, then we can talk. We're reading massive system failures across your ship. Permission to begin evacuation? Yes, of course, but our docking systems are offline. Not a problem. We'll do this the human way. Brace for contact! The human ship moved with surprising grace for something so large. It positioned itself directly against the Zalarian vessel. Then, with a grinding sound that echoed through both ships, they cut through the hull. Zalarian ships were built with elegant airlocks and sophisticated docking procedures. The humans simply cut a hole and sealed it with some kind of expanding foam. It was crude, brutal even. But it worked. The first humans to board wore heavy armor and carried weapons, but their body language was relaxed, friendly. They moved through the ship quickly, helping Zalarians who were too weak from cold and hunger to walk. They brought blankets, hot drinks, and medical supplies. "Don't worry about your cargo," one of them said to Crix. "We'll tow your ship back too. Nothing gets left behind." Within hours, all 47 Zalarians were aboard the human ship. The difference was shocking. Where their ship had been dying and cold, the Resilience was warm and full of life. The humans had prepared quarters for them, somehow knowing exactly what conditions Zalarians needed. There was proper food, clean water, and medical facilities. Captain Chen gave them a tour. The ship was fascinating. It combined incredibly advanced technology with solutions so simple they seemed primitive. Next to a faster-than-light drive that bent space itself was a kitchen where humans cooked food over open flames. Advanced quantum computers sat next to paper books. "Your ship," Crix said as they walked. "It's built for war." Chen nodded. "Humanity has a complicated history. We've fought a lot of wars among ourselves. When we finally reached the stars, we promised we'd do better, but we kept the weapons and armor. Not to conquer, but to protect, to help. And the rescue? How did you know? How did you get here? 3 years ago, we picked up your distress beacon. We didn't know who you were, but someone needed help. So we've been developing this rescue technology ever since, pushing our science to its limits. Our entire planet worked on this. Scientists, engineers, even school children who sent in ideas. 3 years? But we only sent the beacon 3 days ago. Chen smiled again. Time is relative in space, Captain. Your beacon passed through a quantum anomaly. We received it 3 years ago, but for you, it's only been days. We've been preparing for this rescue before you even needed it. Crix's mind struggled with the concept. Your entire planet? For strangers? That's what humans do. We see someone in trouble, we help. Doesn't matter if we've never met them before. Doesn't matter if they're from Earth or from the other side of the galaxy. You needed help. That's all that mattered. In the medical bay, human doctors worked alongside the ship's Zalarian medical officer to treat the crew. They had somehow acquired detailed knowledge of Zalarian biology. When asked, they explained they had traded with other species, gathered all available information, and even made educated guesses based on universal biological principles. We overprepared, one doctor admitted, built equipment for 12 different possible biologies. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. The Resilience began its journey back to Zalarian space. The human faster-than-light drive was unlike anything the Zalarians had seen. Instead of entering hyperspace, it folded space around the ship, bringing distant points together. The journey that would have taken weeks by quantum drive took only days. During the trip, the humans shared their story. Earth was a relatively new player on the galactic stage. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. By galactic standards, they were children. But they brought something unique to the stars, an unstoppable drive to help others. They told stories of their home world, of firefighters who ran into burning buildings, of lifeguards who dove into stormy seas, of ordinary people who became heroes simply because someone needed help. This rescue, traveling between stars to save strangers, was just humanity being human. "We've made mistakes," Chen admitted during one conversation. "Lots of them. Our history has dark chapters, wars, cruelty, failures. But we try to learn. We try to be better. And when we see someone in trouble, we can't just fly by. It's not in our nature." The Zalarians shared their own stories, their ancient civilization, their achievements in science and art. They talked about their families, their fears during those dark days drifting between stars. Bonds formed between human and Zalarian. By the time they reached Zalarian space, they were no longer strangers. The arrival was overwhelming. The Zalarian Confederation had given up hope. The families had begun mourning. When the Resilients appeared in their home system, broadcasting that all hands were safe, celebrations erupted across multiple worlds. High Chancellor Vetrix himself came aboard the Resilients. The leader of billions bowed to Captain Chen. "You have saved our people. The Confederation is in your debt. Name your price, technology, resources, territory. Whatever humanity needs." Chen shook her head. "No price, no debt. We helped because it was the right thing to do. That's payment enough. Surely there must be something we can offer." "Well," Chen said with a grin, "we'd love to be friends, exchange students, share knowledge, maybe trade recipes. Our cook is dying to know how you make that purple bread." The Chancellor was stunned. An entire species with the power to bend space itself, wanting nothing more than friendship and bread recipes. The rescued crew was transferred to a Zalarian medical station for final checkups. Families reunited with tears and joy. Captain Crix found himself standing with Captain Chen, watching the celebrations. "I need to ask," Crix said. "The truth. Why did humanity really do this? The cost must have been astronomical, the risk enormous. Why?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she pointed at the reunions happening around them. A child running to embrace a parent. Partners holding each other, crew members surrounded by loved ones they thought they'd never see again. "That's why," she said simply. "Because somewhere in the universe, children were about to lose their parents. Because people were dying alone in the dark. Because we could help, so we did. It's that simple. Most species aren't like that. Maybe not, but humans are. We're stubborn that way." Before the Resilients left, there was a ceremony. The Zalarian Confederation formally welcomed Earth as friends and allies. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges were planned, but more importantly, stories were shared. The story of the rescue spread across the galaxy. Of a young species that built a rescue ship before they knew who they were rescuing. Of humans who cut through a ship's hull because docking was too slow. Of people who crossed impossible distances simply because someone cried for help. Other species took notice. Some were inspired, some were puzzled, some were frightened by humans' seemingly reckless willingness to risk everything for strangers. But all learned the same lesson. When you're lost in the dark between stars, hope for humans to hear your call. Captain Crix kept in touch with Captain Chen. They became friends, sharing messages across the light years. Other human ships began appearing in Zalarian space, always ready to help, always asking for nothing but friendship in return. And in the schools of Zalarian worlds, children learned a new phrase in the human language, 2 words that captured an entire species' spirit. "We're coming." Because that's what humans do. They come. Through impossible odds, across unthinkable distances, bending the laws of physics themselves. When someone needs help, humans come. The universe was vast and often cruel. Dangers lurked between stars. Ships would still face disaster. Crews would still find themselves lost and alone. But now they knew they weren't truly alone. Somewhere among the stars, humans were listening. And if you called for help, they would come. They always come. 6 months had passed since the Zalarian rescue. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. News of humanity's impossible rescue mission spread from system to system, carried by traders, diplomats, and travelers. Each telling added new details, new perspectives on the strange species that built rescue ships for people they'd never met. On Space Station Kronos 7, a massive trading hub where dozens of species mingled, Ambassador Threk of the Morvanian Empire sat in a quiet bar, nursing a drink that glowed softly blue. Across from him sat Admiral Jessica Rodriguez of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. "My government wants to understand," Threk said, his 4 eyes focused intently on the human. "Your rescue of the Zalarians has upset every calculation we had about your species. You spent the resources of an entire colony ship on saving 47 individuals. It makes no economic sense." Rodriguez smiled. She'd had this conversation before with other species. "Not everything is about economics, Ambassador. Sometimes it's about doing what's right." "But the cost—" "Let me tell you another story," Rodriguez interrupted gently. "Last month, we received a distress signal from a Vorian science vessel. Their experiment went wrong, opened a micro-black hole inside their ship. They had minutes before it consumed them." Threk leaned forward. He hadn't heard this story. "We had a cargo ship nearby. Captain Mohammed Hassan. He was carrying medical supplies to a human colony dealing with a disease outbreak. Vital supplies that would save thousands. But Hassan didn't hesitate. He dumped his entire cargo into space to make room for the Vorian crew, got them out with seconds to spare." "The colonists?" "Another ship had to be dispatched. The disease claimed 12 lives that might have been saved if the supplies had arrived on time." Rodriguez's face was somber. Hassan knew that might happen. He made the choice anyway, because those Vorians were dying right then, and he could save them. "Your own people died because of that choice." "Yes, and it haunts Hassan every day. But if he had to make the choice again, he'd do the same thing. Because that's who we are. We save who we can, when we can. We deal with the consequences later." Threk's skin patterns, which showed emotion in his species, swirled with confusion. "This is not logical." "No," Rodriguez agreed. "It's not. It's human." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. The station's communication system crackled to life. "All available vessels, this is Kronos 7 Control. We have received a priority distress signal. The luxury liner Celestial Dream is caught in a gravity storm near the Maelstrom Nebula. 800 passengers, multiple species. Any ships capable of rescue operations, please respond." Rodriguez was already standing, activating her communicator. "This is Admiral Rodriguez to ESD Singapore. Prep for immediate departure." "Admiral," the station controller's voice came through. "The Maelstrom is 3 days away at maximum FTL. The liner only has 40 hours of life support." "Then we'll have to be creative," Rodriguez said. She looked at Threk. "Ambassador, I need to go." "Wait," Threk said. "My battlecruiser is docked here. It's faster than your ship. If you'll show us how to help." Rodriguez grinned. "Welcome to your first human-style rescue mission, Ambassador." Within an hour, a strange fleet had assembled. Rodriguez's destroyer, ESD Singapore, led the way, but it was joined by Threk's battlecruiser, 2 Zalarian freight ships whose crews insisted on helping after humans had saved their people, and even a Korvath pirate vessel whose captain claimed he was just curious. The human rescue doctrine was simple. Everyone who could help should help. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together. Rodriguez coordinated from the Singapore, turning the mixed fleet into a rescue armada. "Listen up, everyone," her voice came through the communications. "The Celestial Dream is stuck in a level 9 gravity storm. That means we can't just fly in. We need to destabilize the storm first. Singapore will take point with graviton torpedoes. Threk, Your battlecruiser has the strongest shields. You'll pull escort. Zalarian freighters, you've got the cargo space for evacuees. Captain Corv, despite what your file says about your ship being a legitimate salvage vessel, your illegal military-grade tractor beams might be our best shot at pulling the liner free. Allegedly illegal, the pirate captain corrected with amusement. As they raced toward the Maelstrom Nebula, something remarkable happened. Word of the rescue attempt spread. Other ships changed course to help. A medical ship from the Altarian Collective, engineering vessels from the Tarkanian Union. Even a diplomatic yacht from the xenophobic hierarchs diverted to assist. By the time they reached the nebula, 63 ships from 19 species had joined the rescue fleet. Most had never worked together before. Some were from species that actively disliked each other, but they all followed the human lead. The Celestial Dream was in worse shape than expected. The luxury liner, built for comfort, not durability, was being torn apart by the gravity storm. Hull breaches had already claimed 3 decks. The passengers, tourists who had paid premium prices to see the beautiful nebula, were now packed into the ship's central areas as life support failed section by section. "Singapore to all ships," Rodriguez commanded. "Execute Rescue Plan Alpha. Remember, lives first, property second. If you have to damage the liner to save people, do it." The rescue was chaos organized into purpose. Human ships fired specialized torpedoes that exploded into graviton fields, creating pockets of stable space. The Morvanian battlecruiser's massive shields protected smaller ships as they darted in. Zalarian freighters positioned themselves to receive evacuees. The pirates' tractor beams, apparently rated for much larger prey than he'd ever admitted to stealing, locked onto the liner. But the storm was winning. Each stable pocket collapsed faster than the last. The liner's hull screamed under the stress. "We're not going to make it," someone reported. "The storm's getting stronger." On the Singapore's bridge, Rodriguez studied the readings. Then she made a decision that would be debated in military academies for decades. "All ships, emergency evacuation pattern. We're going to surf the storm." "Admiral," her navigator said, "that's suicide." "No," Rodriguez corrected, "that's human." She outlined a plan that defied conventional wisdom. Instead of fighting the gravity storm, they would use it. Ships would allow themselves to be caught in the storm's rotation, using its own power to slingshot them close to the liner. They would have seconds to grab evacuees before being flung back out. "This is insane," Threck said over the communication. "Yes," Rodriguez agreed. "You can leave if you want. No judgment." There was a pause. Then Threck's voice came back, steady and determined. "Morvanians do not abandon allies. We're with you." One by one, every ship in the fleet signaled agreement. They would attempt the impossible because humans had shown them it could be done. The dance that followed was beautiful and terrifying. Ships dove into gravity wells that should have crushed them, shields screaming, hulls groaning. They matched the storm's rotation, using physics that bent but didn't quite break. The Singapore went first, demonstrating the technique. Rodriguez's crew, trained in what humans called aggressive emergency maneuvers, executed the impossible with practiced ease. They swooped past the liner, transporters working overtime, grabbing 50 passengers in a 10-second window before the storm flung them clear. Seeing it could be done, others followed. The massive Morvanian battlecruiser, never designed for such maneuvers, danced through gravity fields like a spacecraft a tenth its size. Threck, gripping his command chair, pushed his crew beyond what they thought possible. "This is madness!" his first officer shouted over the strain. "No!" Threck replied, surprising himself with the response. "This is human!" The Zalarian freighters, built for cargo not acrobatics, modified their approach. They couldn't dance with the storm, but they could endure it. They positioned themselves as stationary evacuation points, taking tremendous damage but holding position long enough for smaller ships to transfer passengers. Even the pirate surprised everyone. His ship, apparently equipped with even more illegal modifications than anyone suspected, performed maneuvers that made experienced pilots sick just watching. He saved over 100 passengers, though he complained loudly about the damage to his legitimate salvage equipment. The rescue took 8 hours, 8 hours of ships dancing with death, of crews pushing past exhaustion, of engineers performing miracles to keep damaged vessels functional. But one by one, the Celestial Dream's passengers were evacuated. With 10 minutes left before the liner's final collapse, only the crew remained. Captain Ivet, a proud Altarian who had gone down with ships before, refused to leave. Rodriguez personally led the boarding party to get her. "Captain Ivet," she said, finding the Altarian on her bridge, "with respect, get your ass on the shuttle." "A captain stays with her ship," Yvette replied firmly. "A human captain might," Rodriguez said. "But your passengers need you alive. Your crew needs you alive. Don't make me carry you." "You wouldn't dare," Rodriguez smiled. "I'm human. Try me." In the end, Yvette walked onto the shuttle under her own power, grumbling about human stubbornness. As they cleared the liner, the Celestial Dream finally succumbed to the storm, crushed into a ball of metal no bigger than a shuttle. But every soul aboard had been saved. 800 passengers, 40 crew. Not a single life lost. The journey back to Kronos 7 was subdued. Ships limped along with damaged hulls and overtaxed engines. But there was also a sense of accomplishment, of shared purpose. Species that had barely spoken before now chattered over communications, sharing stories, jokes, and promises to meet again. On the Singapore, Rodriguez found Ambassador Threk in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "How do you do it?" he asked without turning. "How do you make that choice again and again? To risk everything for strangers?" Rodriguez joined him at the window. "You just did it yourself." "How did it feel?" Threk was quiet for a long moment. "Terrifying, exhausting, and..." He paused, searching for words. "Right. It felt right." "That's how we do it," Rodriguez said simply. "Because it feels right." The arrival at Kronos 7 was triumphant. News of the rescue had spread. The station was packed with beings wanting to witness the return. Families reunited. Medical teams rushed to help the injured. And everywhere, the conversation was the same. Humans had done it again. And this time, they'd shown others how to do it too. In the following days, something unprecedented happened. The various species involved in the rescue didn't just go their separate ways. They met formally and informally. They shared techniques, technologies, and most importantly, philosophies. The Zalarians, remembering their own rescue, proposed a formal alliance, not for trade or military purposes, but for rescue operations. They called it the Interstellar Rescue Coalition, and humanity was asked to lead it. "We don't need to lead," Admiral Rodriguez said at the founding meeting. "We just need to show up and help. Everyone can do that." But they insisted. Humanity's approach to rescue, fast, aggressive, accepting any help offered, became the template. Training programs were established. Ships were modified with human-designed rescue equipment. Most importantly, the human attitude spread. When someone needs help, you help. The pirate captain, still maintaining his ship was completely legal, became one of the first non-human certified rescue specialists. Ambassador Threk convinced the Morvanian Empire to dedicate a fleet to rescue operations. The Zalarians shared their advanced medical technology. Even the xenophobic hierarchs quietly began training crews in human rescue techniques. But it wasn't without cost. A month after the Celestial Dream rescue, humanity faced criticism from the Galactic Council's Economics Committee. "Your species' reckless approach to rescue operations is destabilizing galactic markets," the committee chair, a Vorthon named Krex announced. Resources are being diverted from profitable ventures to these humanitarian missions. Ships are being damaged, trade routes disrupted. This must stop. The human representative, a soft-spoken diplomat named David Park, stood to respond. The council chamber fell silent. Last week, Park began, a Vorthon colony ship suffered engine failure in deep space. They were carrying 10,000 colonists to a new world. No one answered their distress call for 16 hours. No one except a human mining vessel that dumped its entire payload of rare minerals to make room for evacuees. He looked directly at Krex. Those minerals were worth more than the GDP of a small planet. The mining company will likely go bankrupt. But 10,000 Vorthons are alive. Chairman Krex, your daughter was on that ship. The chairman's scaled face went pale. Economics matter, Park continued. But people matter more. That's the human position. It will always be the human position. We're not asking anyone else to adopt it. But we won't abandon it. The council voted. The result was surprising. Species after species stood with humanity. Not because they were forced to, but because they had seen what was possible when you put lives before profit. The Economics Committee's motion to restrict rescue operations failed by the widest margin in council history. After the vote, Chairman Krex approached Park. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for my daughter, for all of them." Park smiled. That's what neighbors do. The word spread across the galaxy. Humans and their allies continued their rescue operations. Sometimes they succeeded spectacularly. Sometimes they failed, and the failures haunted them, but they never stopped trying. A year after the Zalarian rescue, Captain Chen of the Resilience received a message. It was from a species humanity had never encountered before, from beyond the galactic rim. The message was simple. We are lost. We are dying. We have heard of humans. Please come. Chen looked at her crew. They were tired from their latest mission, rescuing miners from a collapsed asteroid. Their ship needed repairs. By any logical measure, they should rest. Plot a course, Chen ordered. Maximum speed. Captain, her first officer said gently, we don't even know where they are exactly. It could take months to find them. Then we'd better get started, Chen replied. As the Resilience turned toward unknown space, ready to bend reality itself to save strangers, the galaxy watched. Some called humans reckless, some called them naive, but more and more called them something else. Hope. Because in a universe where civilizations measured worth in credits and power, humanity measured it in lives saved. In a galaxy where species passed by suffering because it wasn't profitable to help, humans dumped cargo and risked everything because someone cried out in the dark. The rescue coalition grew. Training academies opened on dozen worlds. Ships were retrofitted with human-designed emergency equipment. The phrase human-style rescue entered 100 languages. But more than technology or technique, it was the attitude that spread. The ancient Korvath, who had built their empire on conquest, began dedicating warships to rescue duty. The logical synthoids, artificial intelligences who calculated everything, added a new variable to their equations. What would humans do? Even species humanity had never met began answering distress calls, claiming they were inspired by the human example. Not every species understood. The hegemon collective, beings of pure energy who saw physical life as inferior, questioned why anyone would risk themselves for others. The Zero Corporation, traders who measured everything in profit, called it economic madness. But even they couldn't deny the results. Space was becoming safer, not through military might or economic pressure, but through the simple principle that when someone called for help, someone would answer. Usually humans, but increasingly anyone who had learned the human way. On Earth, children grew up hearing stories of the rescues. They played games where they saved aliens from danger. They learned that being human meant being willing to help, no matter the cost. Military academies added rescue operations to combat training. The motto of Earth's deep space fleet became, "We go where others can't." But perhaps the most telling change was in how humanity was perceived. Where once they were seen as newcomers, barely civilized by galactic standards, they were now sought out, not for their technology or military might, but for their spirit. Alliance offers poured in, not the careful, calculated alliances of mutual benefit that characterized galactic politics, but genuine partnerships. Species wanted to work with humans not because of what humanity could offer in trade or protection, but because humans had shown them a different way to be. The Zalarians became humanity's closest allies, their rescue triggering a friendship that transcended politics. Zalarian technology combined with human determination created rescue ships that could reach anywhere in the galaxy within days. They called them Hope-class vessels, and their arrival at disaster scenes became legendary. Ambassador Threk, changed by his experience with the Celestial Dream Rescue, convinced the Morvanian Empire to restructure their entire fleet. Half their military was converted to rescue operations. Warriors who had trained for combat found new purpose in saving lives. Threk himself commanded the first Morvanian rescue vessel, named Rodriguez, in honor of the human who had shown him the way. Even the pirate, whose name turned out to be Corvash the Bold, became a hero. He used his knowledge of smuggling routes and hidden bases to reach disasters in lawless space where official ships couldn't go. He still claimed to be a legitimate businessman, but his ship was always available when lives were at stake. The impact went beyond rescue operations. Humanity's approach began influencing galactic culture in subtle ways. Labor disputes were settled by asking, what would benefit the workers most? Treaties included clauses about mutual aid in emergencies. The ancient tradition of abandoning the weak was questioned on worlds that had practiced it for millennia. Not everyone appreciated the changes. The social Darwinist faction argued that saving everyone weakened the gene pool. The economic purists claimed resources were being wasted on non-productive individuals. But their voices grew quieter as world after world saw the benefits of the human approach. On a space station orbiting a binary star, a memorial was erected. It listed every life saved in what they called human-style rescues. The list grew daily, names from 100 species saved by crews from 100 more. At the top, in letters visible from orbit, were words that captured humanity's gift to the galaxy. Every life matters. But humans weren't satisfied with just rescues. They pushed further. Research stations were established to predict disasters before they happened. Early warning networks spread across space. Ships were designed specifically for evacuation. The goal wasn't just to save lives after disaster struck, but to prevent disasters entirely. An ounce of prevention, as human engineers like to say, though no one else understood what an ounce was. The culmination came when humanity proposed something audacious, a galactic emergency response network. Every ship, regardless of species or affiliation, would be part of the system. Distress calls would be automatically routed to the nearest capable vessel. Training would be standardized. Resources would be pre-positioned. "You're asking us to restructure galactic civilization around emergency response," the council president said during the debate. "Yes," the human representative replied simply. "The cost will be less than the cost of losing even one ship full of people because help was too far away." The debate was fierce. Old grudges surfaced. Species that had been enemies for centuries balked at working together so closely. The economics were staggering. The logistics were mind-bending. But then stories were told. The Zalarian rescue, the Celestial Dream, 1,000 smaller incidents where human-inspired rescues had saved lives. Representatives spoke of their own people saved by this new philosophy. When the vote came, it passed. Not unanimously, some species remained skeptical, but enough believed in the human vision to make it reality. The Galactic Emergency Response Network was born, with Earth as its first headquarters. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Humanity, one of the youngest spacefaring species, was now teaching the galaxy how to be civilized, not through force or manipulation, but through example, by showing that strength wasn't measured in weapons or wealth, but in willingness to help. Years passed. The network grew. Rescue operations became routine. Human style dropped from the terminology. It was just how things were done now. Ships racing across space to save strangers became so common it rarely made news unless the rescue was particularly dramatic. But humans kept pushing. When a survey ship discovered a pre-FTL civilization facing an extinction-level asteroid impact, humanity led the effort to secretly deflect it. When a plague threatened to wipe out the Mallory homeworld, human medical ships arrived before the official request for help was even sent. When the star of the Kelpie system showed signs of instability, humanity organized the evacuation of 3 inhabited worlds, moving billions to safety. Each action reinforced the message. In this galaxy, no one faced disaster alone. The ripple effects were profound. Wars decreased. It was hard to fight someone who had saved your colony from a reactor meltdown last year. Trade increased as trust grew. Scientific collaboration flourished as species shared knowledge to prevent disasters. The galaxy was transforming, one rescue at a time. And at the heart of it all were humans, still young by galactic standards, still learning. But teaching the most important lesson any civilization could learn: we're all in this together. 5 years after the Galactic Emergency Response Network was established, the universe decided to test everything humanity had taught. It started with a whisper in the cosmic background radiation, an anomaly detected by the Deep Space Monitoring Station at the edge of known space. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's lead astrophysicist on the station, stared at the readings in disbelief. She ran the calculations again, then a third time. The results didn't change. "Get me a priority channel to Earth," she told her assistant, "and wake everyone. I mean everyone." Within hours, every major civilization received the same terrifying message. A rogue dark matter storm, larger than anything in recorded history, was heading directly for the galactic core. Its gravitational effects would destabilize star systems, tear apart space lanes, and potentially make a third of the galaxy uninhabitable for millennia. They had 18 months. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within days. Representatives from every spacefaring species gathered, their faces showing the same mix of fear and determination. The projections were displayed for all to see. Hundreds of inhabited systems in the storm's path, trillions of lives at risk. "The storm is too large to stop," the Synthoid Collective announced, their mechanical voices carrying no emotion but somehow conveying doom. "Our calculations show no technological solution." "Then we evacuate," Admiral Rodriguez said. She was older now, gray streaking her hair, but her voice carried the same determination that had saved the Celestial Dream years ago. "We move everyone out of the storm's path." "Impossible," the Vorthon representative said. "We're talking about relocating the population of 3,000 worlds. No civilization has the resources." "No single civilization does," Rodriguez interrupted. "But together? We've trained for this. Maybe not on this scale, but the principle is the same. This is just a rescue mission. The biggest one ever, but still a rescue mission." The chamber erupted in arguments. The scale was staggering. Where would billions of refugees go? How could they transport so many? The logistics alone would take years to plan, and they had months. Then a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Captain Crix, the Zalarian who had been rescued years ago, now commanded their largest evacuation fleet. "5 years ago," he said, "my crew was dying between stars. Humans didn't ask if rescuing us was logical or economical or even possible. They just came. Now the galaxy faces death between stars. The question isn't whether we can do this. The question is, are we human enough to try? The phrase echoed through the chamber. Are we human enough? It had become a rallying cry across the galaxy, a challenge to be better, to help regardless of the cost. One by one, representatives stood. The Morvanians offered their entire fleet. The Korvath pledged their industrial base to build evacuation ships. Even the energy-based hegemons, who had long dismissed physical life, offered to help stabilize space during the evacuation. Earth's representative, now David Park as chief coordinator of the response network, took the podium. Humanity commits everything. Every ship, every resource, every person who can help. But more than that, we share everything we've learned. Every technique, every technology, every lesson from every rescue. We hold nothing back. The plan that emerged was audacious beyond belief. They would build the largest evacuation fleet in galactic history. Existing ships would be retrofitted. New ones would be constructed at a pace that defied conventional manufacturing. They would establish refugee worlds, terraforming at speeds never attempted before. But first, they needed to know exactly who needed evacuating. Within days, survey fleets spread across the threatened region. The discoveries were heartbreaking. Ancient civilizations that had existed since before humans discovered fire. Newly evolved species just taking their first steps into space. Worlds of art and science that would be lost forever. The Talarians had built their entire civilization around their star's unique radiation. They couldn't survive anywhere else. Then, we bring your star with us, human engineers declared. That's impossible, Talarian scientists protested. So was reaching you in time, the humans replied. We'll figure it out. And they did. Using theoretical physics that bent reality, combining technologies from a dozen species, they created stellar movement fields. Not to move the star entirely, that was beyond even humanity's optimism, but to capture and transport enough of its unique radiation to sustain the Talarians wherever they relocated. The construction efforts defied imagination. The shipyards of Proxima burned bright as welders worked around the clock. The Korvath forges, which had crafted weapons for millennia, now produced evacuation pods by the millions. On Earth, children collected scrap metal for recycling into ship hulls. But it wasn't just about ships. The Zalarians revolutionized cryogenic technology, allowing species to sleep through the journey. The Synthoids created logistics algorithms that managed the impossible flow of refugees. The Morvanians, masters of warfare, applied their strategic genius to evacuation planning. Even the pirates helped. Korvash the Bold, now openly admitting his past, led a fleet of former criminals in evacuating worlds too dangerous for official ships to reach. We know all the hiding spots, he said with a grin. Might as well use that knowledge for good. 3 months into the evacuation, they hit the first major crisis. The Delphini system's star went nova earlier than predicted, triggered by the approaching storm's gravitational effects. 12 billion souls, an aquatic species that needed specific water conditions to survive, were trapped. The rescue fleet was still hours away when the nova began. By all calculations, they would arrive to find only ash, but calculations didn't account for human stubbornness. Captain Sarah Chen, commanding the Hope-class vessel Resilience II, made a decision that physics said was impossible. She overloaded her ship's FTL drive, pushing it beyond every safety margin. Space itself screamed in protest as the Resilience II tore through dimensions that weren't meant to be traveled. She arrived with minutes to spare, her ship's hull glowing from the strain, but one ship couldn't evacuate billions. Chen did the only thing she could. She positioned the Resilience 2 between the Nova and the planet, using her ship's experimental shields to buy time. All ships, this is Resilience 2. Her voice crackled across space. I'm holding the line. Get here now. The shield held for 17 minutes. 17 minutes of a single ship standing against the fury of a dying star. By the time the evacuation fleet arrived, the Resilience 2 was melting, her crew accepting their fate to save others. But the fleet had learned from humanity. A Morvanian battlecruiser locked tractor beams on the Resilience 2, pulling her to safety, even as they began emergency evacuations. Zalarian medical ships formed shield bubbles around population centers. Korvath industrial vessels literally scooped up sections of ocean containing millions of Delphini. They saved 10 billion. 2 billion were lost to the Nova, a tragedy that would haunt everyone involved. But without Chen's impossible stand, all would have perished. The rescue of the Delphini became legendary, but it was just one story among thousands. On every threatened world, miracles became commonplace. Species who had been enemies worked side by side. Technologies were combined in ways their creators never imagined. And always, the human attitude prevailed. Save everyone you can. Mourn those you can't. Never stop trying. 6 months in, they faced a different crisis. The refugee worlds were overflowing. Tensions rose as resources stretched thin. Some species began hoarding supplies, old prejudices resurfacing under stress. It was a human child who provided the solution. 8-year-old Marcus Park, son of David Park, was in a refugee camp on New Terra when fighting broke out between Vorthon and Kelphi refugees over food supplies. The adults were ready for violence when Marcus walked between them, holding 2 pieces of his own meal. "My daddy says we share," he announced, handing 1 piece to each group. "That's what humans do. We share." The simple act, recorded by a news drone, spread across the galaxy within hours. Shame replaced anger. Here was a child giving up his own food while adults fought over plenty. Share. Such a simple concept, but one that many species had forgotten in their fear. Sharing became policy. Worlds that had space took in more refugees than they could comfortably hold, knowing others would share resources to help. Technologies were no longer traded but given freely. Food, medicine, and shelter became communal resources. The Zero Corporation, those ultimate capitalists, shocked everyone by opening their vast warehouses. "Profit means nothing if there's no galaxy left to spend it in," their CEO announced, personally overseeing distribution of supplies worth more than some star systems. As the evacuation continued, something beautiful emerged. The mixing of so many species, forced together by necessity, created unprecedented cultural exchange. Zalarian poets taught human children their ancient songs. Morvanian warriors learned Terran cooking from refugee grandmothers. Korvath engineers worked alongside synthoid programmers to solve problems neither could handle alone. New friendships formed. A human doctor named Lisa Chen, no relation to Captain Chen, spent months treating hegemony energy beings, learning to heal life forms she couldn't even touch. Her patients, in turn, used their abilities to power the hospital during shortages. When asked why beings of pure energy would help physical creatures, their spokesperson replied, "We learned from humans, life is life." Romance bloomed, too. The first human-Zalarian marriage made headlines. A Morvanian warrior fell in love with a Delphini artist, their wedding held in a tank that allowed both to attend. Species that couldn't even breathe the same atmosphere found ways to express love across environmental suits. But the greatest change was in the children. Raised in mixed camps, playing with friends from 100 worlds, they grew up without the prejudices of their parents. To them, diversity was normal. A human child's best friend might be a young Korvath whose grandparents had raided human colonies. A Zalarian youngling might learn mathematics from a synthoid and art from a Vorthon. These children began calling themselves Galactics, not citizens of any one world, but of the galaxy itself. They spoke pidgin languages, mixing words from dozens of tongues. They played games that combined traditions from every culture. Most importantly, they absolutely refused to see species differences as barriers. "That's just how Sarah looks," a human boy said when asked about his Morvanian friend's forearms. "She's really good at catch." 12 months into the evacuation, they faced their darkest hour. The storm accelerated, cutting their remaining time in half. Billions were still in its path. The mathematics were cruel. They couldn't save everyone at the current pace. The Emergency Council convened on Refuge Prime, the largest of the new worlds. Representatives looked haggard, exhausted by months of non-stop crisis management. The projections were clear. Even working at maximum efficiency, they would save only 70% of those in danger. "We need to prioritize," someone suggested. "Save the youngest, the most productive." No. The voice was quiet but firm. Admiral Rodriguez, now bearing the title Galactic Rescue Coordinator, stood slowly. Age and exhaustion marked her face, but her eyes burned with the same fire that had saved the Celestial Dream. "We don't choose who lives and who dies. We save everyone we can until we can't save any more. But we don't stop trying. We don't give up on anyone." "The math," the Synthoid Collective began. "Fuck the math," Rodriguez said, shocking the chamber with profanity. "Humans have been beating impossible math since we started this. So here's what we do. We get creative. We get crazy. We do things the math says are impossible." She outlined a plan that made their previous efforts look conservative. They would strip entire fleets down to bare hulls, maximizing capacity. They would use experimental teleportation that had a 10% failure rate. They would push FTL drives past every limit. They would attempt things that simulations said would fail. "Some of us will die trying," Rodriguez admitted. "But that's better than letting billions die because we didn't try." The chamber was silent. Then Crix stood. "The Zalarians follow Earth." Threk rose next. "The Morvanians stand with humanity." One by one, every representative stood. Even the logical synthoids, after a brief calculation, announced, "The probability of success is low, but the probability without trying is 0. We concur." What followed was controlled chaos on a galactic scale. Safety regulations were thrown out. Ships made runs that should have torn them apart. Pilots flew through spatial anomalies that existed only in theory. Engineers created solutions powered by desperation and determination. The pirate Corvash made history by stealing an entire moon. Literally, he attached massive engines to a small moon, turning it into the largest evacuation vessel ever created. When asked how he did it, he just grinned and said, "You learn things in my former profession." Children helped where they could. Teenagers flew supply shuttles. Preteens organized refugee camps with military efficiency. Even toddlers helped by keeping younger children calm during terrifying evacuations. The galaxy's youth rose to the challenge, inspired by stories of human children who had always been part of their world's rescue efforts. With 1 month remaining, they achieved the impossible. The last inhabited world in the storm's path was evacuated. 97% of threatened populations had been saved. It wasn't perfect. Billions had still been lost. But it was a miracle by any measure. As the storm hit the now empty systems, the galaxy watched from safe distances. Stars were torn apart. Planets were flung into the void. Space itself twisted in ways that hurt to observe, but no one was there to suffer. The greatest evacuation in history had succeeded. The aftermath was both triumph and challenge. Trillions of beings needed new homes. Entire civilizations had to be rebuilt. Cultures had to adapt to new worlds. But they had survived, and more, They had survived together. The integration wasn't always smooth. There were conflicts over resources, disagreements over territory, clashes between incompatible cultures. But always, someone would remember, are we human enough? And the conflicts would find resolution. Earth, despite being far from the storm's path, had given everything to the rescue effort. Their economy was in ruins. Their fleet was decimated. By traditional measures, they had crippled themselves for centuries. When the Galactic Council met to discuss compensation, humanity's response surprised no one who truly knew them. "We need nothing," Park said simply. "Seeing everyone safe is payment enough." But the galaxy insisted. Resources flowed to Earth. Technologies were shared. Trade agreements were signed that would restore Earth's economy within decades instead of centuries. More importantly, Earth was given something priceless: the eternal gratitude of 1,000 worlds. Monuments were erected on every saved world. Children were named after human heroes. Chen, Rodriguez, and Park became common names across species that couldn't even pronounce them properly. But the greatest monument was living, the transformed galaxy itself. 5 years after the storm passed, a ceremony was held on New Harmony, a world settled jointly by refugees from 50 different species. It had become a symbol of the new galactic civilization, diverse, chaotic, but unified by shared experience. Admiral Rodriguez, now retired, was asked to speak. She looked out at the crowd, humans and Zalarians, Morvanians and Delphini, species that had no names in human languages, children who called themselves galactic. They had come to celebrate not just survival, but transformation. "Before humanity reached the stars," she began, "we had a word, Ubuntu. It means, I am because we are. We tried to bring that to space, to show that we're all connected, that when one suffers, we all suffer. When one needs help, we all help." She paused, emotion clear in her voice. "We never expected the galaxy to embrace it so completely. You took our simple idea, helped those in need, and made it magnificent. You showed us that Ubuntu works not just between humans, but between all life." The crowd was silent, many species showing emotion in their own ways. Scales shifted color, energy beings pulsed. Even the logical synthoids seemed somehow softer. "So thank you," Rodriguez continued. "Thank you for proving that compassion is universal. Thank you for showing that courage knows no species. Thank you for becoming human enough to save us all." As she stepped down, Marcus Park, now 13 and representing the galactic youth, took the stage. He had grown up in refugee camps, his playmates from a dozen worlds. He spoke in the pidgin that had become the unofficial language of his generation. "Admiral Rodriguez speaks of becoming human," he said. "But we young ones, we think different. Human, Zalarian, Morvanian, these are old words. We are all galactic now. We are one people with many faces. And our way is simple. When someone cries in the dark, we bring light. Always." His words, broadcast across the galaxy, became the motto of the new generation. Species distinctions mattered less and less. The old barriers crumbled. The galaxy had been reforged in the crucible of crisis, and what emerged was stronger, kinder, more united than ever before. Years passed. The refugee worlds flourished. New technologies emerged from the mixing of knowledge. Art forms impossible without multiple species collaborating became popular. The Galactic Emergency Response Network evolved into something more, a genuine galactic government based not on power, but on mutual aid. Humanity's influence spread in subtle ways. Birthday parties included traditions from multiple worlds. Business deals were sealed with promises to help in emergencies. Military academies taught rescue operations alongside combat tactics. What would humans do became less a question about a specific species and more about a way of thinking. The pirates, reformed by their experience, established the Corvash Foundation, using their knowledge of hidden routes to maintain emergency supply caches throughout the galaxy. "Someone's got to keep the tradition of aggressive helping alive," their leader said with his trademark grin. The Synthoids, logic dictating that cooperation yielded better results than isolation, became the galaxy's emergency coordinators. Their vast computational power predicted disasters before they happened, allowing preventive measures that saved countless lives. The hegemons, transformed by their interaction with physical species, established energy barriers around dangerous space phenomena, preventing future storms. "We learned that all consciousness has value," they explained. "Protecting it is logical." But perhaps the most lasting change was in how the galaxy viewed strength. Where once military might or economic power marked a civilization's worth, now it was measured in lives saved, refugees welcomed, help given without expectation of return. The strongest worlds were those that gave the most, not those that took. Earth, by that measure, stood strongest of all, not because humanity forced this view on others, but because they had lived it so completely that others couldn't imagine any other way. They had shown the galaxy that true strength was in lifting others up, not holding them down. 20 years after the Great Evacuation, as the galaxy celebrated its survival and transformation, a new distress signal arrived. From beyond the galactic rim, from a cluster of stars so distant they were barely visible, came a cry for help. An unknown civilization faced a crisis they couldn't survive alone. The response was immediate and unanimous. Ships from every world prepared for the journey. Technologies were gathered. Resources were allocated. The Galactic Rescue Fleet, permanent successor to the emergency network, began its largest expedition since the storm. As the massive fleet prepared to depart, led by the newest Hope-class vessel commanded by Marcus Park, now an adult, someone asked why they were risking so much for complete strangers. Marcus smiled, the expression so perfectly human, yet worn by someone who was friend to all species. "Because someone out there is crying in the dark, and we bring light, always." The fleet departed, carrying the combined strength and compassion of a united galaxy. They went to save strangers who would become friends, to face the impossible because it was right, to prove once again that in this universe, no one faces the dark alone. And watching from Earth, aged faces smiling with pride, the humans who had started it all knew their greatest achievement wasn't the lives they'd saved or the technologies they'd shared. It was the simple idea they'd planted in the hearts of 1,000 species. When someone needs help, you help. The galaxy had become human, and in doing so, it had become something greater than any single species could ever be. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, beings in distress waited for rescue. They didn't know who would come or how, but across the light years, help was already on its way. Because that's what the galaxy did now. That's who they all were. They were human enough to care, and that made all the difference in the universe.